Hi, so chipping, everyone's cooped up in the back gardens with this lockdown, and one of the few things you can do is chip. So I was going to go through what I think are the most important things about chipping and try and help you with that. The first thing to consider is whether you should be chipping at all. And there's too many people take out a pitching club when they could easily putt. The thing with putting is that you'll always get the line right. You'll get the line better certainly than you would on a bad chip. So if I was just knocking one up to that back flag, yeah, I'll slightly let it take the break there. But initially it was all right, and you tend to make a better job of that. So whenever you can putt, the club selection is critical, and a lot of people take too much loft when they're around the green, so they'll take a sand wedge or a lob wedge when really they're only needing a 9 iron or an 8 iron or something like that, a running club. So it would, the basic test that you give yourself is, what would I do if I was tasked with throwing it from where I am? So if I've missed the green and the ball's on the ground, but just imagine you're standing where the ball is and you've got to throw it underarm. Now, what's in your way? Is there a bunker in your way? If there's not a bunker in your way, then I would say that most people would instinctively do this sort of thing to that back flag. They'd get down low, and it would roll most of the way. And they wouldn't think much about doing that. Nobody would be telling them how to move their arm, how fast to move their arm, or anything else. It would just be a nice, gentle underarm throw. So for me, that club, the ones I use the most, there's a 9 iron and a sand wedge, 56 degree sand wedge, because I feel that gives me, the 9 iron gives me this little chip and run shot, and then the sand wedge is for when I do have a hazard in front of me and I have to go over it. So basically the setup first, we'll look at that, and then we'll do a basic chip and swing, and then we'll go on to some of the issues that people have and how to solve that. So the first thing is the setup for standard chip shot, 9 iron, grip down, sorry that's my sand wedge, grip down, so we're making the club shorter because we want control. Grip soft as well, that's for all shots but helps in chipping as well. And stand close, so maybe if you want to come around this side just to show how close I'm standing to the ball. It is quite a bit different with a normal shot. You're way back here. Well, if you just chip from that, the club comes on a different path. You don't want that. You want, basically the simplest way of chipping is to get it a bit like putting. And when you're putting, you're quite close and you're over the ball. So you would literally stand that close to improve your chipping normally. A lot of people stand too far away and a lot can go wrong from there. So stand close, you have your feet close as well, and also slightly open. And that is because the body, when you're throwing, you don't maybe realise it, you're not aware of it, but the body opens towards the target, just faces the target. When I throw this ball, just naturally, there's ever so slightly a little bit of movement of my chest going with my arm. So my body moves through with my arm. It isn't just my body stopping and my arm travelling forward. The body tends to just go with the arm on the way forward. So standing slightly open just sort of presets that. It's almost like you're getting into your finish position because there isn't a lot of speed, there isn't a lot of movement, so you need to just preset that impact position. The ball should be roughly in the middle, so we're looking for, depends what you're trying to do, but this is just a basic chip shot, a normal, not very high one. That ball should be in the middle, and important to get just the middle of your chest, sternum as it's called, in slightly across in front of the ball. A little bit of weight on the left hand side, but be careful with that, don't overdo it. You don't want the club leaning away forward. You want just a little bit on this left side and a little bit of shaft lean forward, but the club quite up and down in the middle. one of the reasons you don't want to lean it forward is because you don't want this edge, this sharp front edge, this leading edge, to dig into the ground. The more you lean that forward, the more that can catch the grass. So you're just trying to set it up a little bit that way, a little bit of lean forward, so it brushes the top of the ground. So I've got a little bit of weight on the left side, ball in the middle, gripping down, gripping soft, sternum slightly ahead, and that is your setup. Now, after that, it is basically a throwing action. So you're basically standing up in that setup position, leaning forward with your arm like that, and you're just imagining that you're keeping your body still as you go back, and then just slightly turning through to the target with a nice straight arm. So that's the motion that you're trying to create in the golf swing. It's as if your right arm just goes back and forward through like that. So it's like a simple underarm throwing action. Important to keep your body still on the way back, that you're not moving. You don't want weight shift on a chip shot, because it's not you're not trying to hit it far, just trying to go for control. And in the full swing, you're turning back and there's movement. Chip shot, you're just steady on the way back and a little bit of movement on the way through. So that is basically it. Let me try one just with a 9-iron, and I'll show you a sand wedge as well. So back there. So I've overhit that, but it's a nice little strike. See if we can just take a bit off it. So just a bit softer, and it's just, get asked about how do you judge distance. Well, how do you judge distance if somebody asks you to throw something to someone? You don't have to go and look up a book or and get confirmation of how fast you've got to swing your arm, or how far back it's got to go. You know, if I'm just asked to throw to that back pin, I don't really think about it. It's the speed of your arm. It isn't even so much the length of your swing, it's more the speed of your swing. So we judge distance. If you look at a long throw and a short throw, you know, a short throw to there, it's probably the same arm length movement as one to double the speed. So if I went, imagine one that was a long way away, that movement, if you looked at them both in slow motion, you'd probably see that going back to there on both throws. But the short one was slower and the long one was faster. So that's how we tend to judge distance, is the speed of the swing as much as the length. So think about speed more than length. So that is basically the setup and the thought process behind hitting a simple chip. It's underarm throw once you've got the setup, or really in simple terms, in that putting stroke is quite a successful way to think of it, that you're back and forward just chipping, putting almost with your chipping club, and that helps it go up in the air. But what you tend to find is people develop bad habits. So they go from being a good chipper who maybe doesn't think about anything really when it comes to technique, to one day they hit a few fat shots, and the next thing you know, there's thins coming in there as a defense mechanism to try and stop you hitting it fat, and you're all over the place, and you think it's a mental problem, but actually it is a technique thing. And with it being a technique thing, that's actually a good thing, because a mental issue is probably even harder to work out. But it tends to be that when you're not thinking about your short game much and it's all natural and flowing, you don't tend to be careful about a lot of the setup things. So sometimes that can slip, and it could be as simple as, you know, you go out one day and you start creeping away from the ball and you're a little bit further away, and so your chipping becomes iffy from that. Or there'll be something that will change without you realizing it in your technique, not in your brain, just in your technique, because you're not being careful enough about it. So you might have to then become a chipper who has to think about technique and has to get everything right before the chip becomes right, and that's fine. You can still be a good chipper doing that. So the fat shot I think, is where it starts to go wrong for people, and that to me is caused by a couple of things. Setup, it can be caused by you being too far forward. There's a lot of advice about staying forward and ball back in your stance and leaning the club forward like this, and a lot of time that just sticks that sharp leading edge, which is like a spade just going into the ground. It just digs and catches and you can't get through. So if you hit down too much into the ground by leaning forward, that's going to go down. Then you're going to hit some fat shots. You're going to hit the ground, you're going to take a big divot, and it's not going to go very far. So to remedy that, just setup wise, you bring it all back to the middle. So you've only got a little bit of weight, tiny bit of weight forward, a little bit of shaft lean, and immediately the club's not swinging down into the ground as much. But I've seen people who do all that and still hit it fat. And that is, to me, where the face angle and the backswing comes into it. And I don't see this getting talked about much, because I think good players do it anyway and they don't think about it, they don't even realise they're doing it. But in a full swing, whether you like it or not, the forearm rotates. You see it quite clearly up here. That watch face is pointing that way. In a natural swing in action, I turn back and that watch face is now up in the sky. So the wrist of the forearm is turned over as it's gone back. Now in a full swing, in a good full swing, that happens. That face angle is looking straight at the ball at the moment. That watch is facing that way. But as I go back into my backswing, it should get there with a little bit of forearm rotation. That watch is pointing out there. Now, with a closed face, one that's going to make the club dig into the ground on the way back, is when you don't let that rotate. So the watch just stays looking at the ground all the way, and the face of the club is looking at the ground. Now, if you do that on a chip shot, you're effectively going to present that leading edge, that sharp spade edge, to the ground first, and not the flat sole, the bounce of the club on the bottom. You're going to dig, and there's a chance you're going to dig. And you might get away with it sometimes, but generally it's dangerous with that face slightly shutting. And with chipping being a short shot, that little rotation that you get on your full swing, because you're moving a bit more, there's more going on, that rotation starts to happen because your arms are traveling further back. It's quite easy to set up leaning a wee bit too far forward or something like that, and then keeping that face closed. I'll try and hit one there. I got away with it. It came out a bit sharp and a bit jumpy, and that's something that can happen. But I'm on AstroTurf, so it's not going to dig in here. If that was a soft grass, I might not have got away with that. Would have dug into the ground. So you're in keeping the face closed on the way back, you've got to be really, really careful with that. What I would suggest as one of my remedies for avoiding that is to, just when you set up, you go, oh, this is assuming all your setup's good. You just let that face slightly open on the way back. So we'll show you it there, this angle. So we've got square there, and then you just start to see a little bit of the face there. Now if I kept that closed, you don't see as much of it. It's still looking at the ground, that face. And that's the one that catches the turf. So, you know, I find if I've hit, this even happens on full swings as well, people get the face closed a little bit and catch things heavy. But it really is something you need to watch on chipping. So quite often get people to hit chips from that open position. So you start there, bounce the club, and then through up. Very good. And that does happen. So we go back here, bounce it. It's a little training thing to do. You have to hit it, generally not bothering too much about how far that's going, you're just getting the contact back. But that little face open position can really help. The other thing that can help if you're having trouble is just simply standing a bit closer. There'll be a lot of people will start to creep away without realising it. So one is open face, second one is standing a bit closer, that can help. And then the third one is keep the body moving through the shot. So always, like we just said, the natural underarm throwing action, you've got to keep that club moving through. So you don't want the body to stop, it's got to keep moving through. A bit thin there. Stay, keep the sternum over the left side. Better strike there. So it's really important. I mean, you look at how you throw, again, that body moves through. So I'm going to throw it that way. And there's just that little movement through. And quite often you'll see people get very frightened with chip shots and the body stops. It just goes into that position. The club goes up in the air and there's very little movement. I see that a lot. So you're trying to just follow the arms through and keep them. One good thing to think about is keeping the arms low and long through the ball. That's a good image that I've used with a few people. When you're trying to chip the ball well, these key ones, so these three things I'm talking about, the stand close, the open club face and the moving the body through, usually I would get somebody to try one of those to make a difference. You would then, if that doesn't work, you would add in maybe say stand closer. That would be the first thing you'd try. Then try the open club face and then make sure you're keeping the body moving. But I've seen it work where, you know, simply turning through is enough for somebody to improve their chip, and just that thought of making sure they follow the body through, or keeping the arms low and long, can also get the strike back. And what you find when if you're trying to get your strike back is you have to accept that that's enough to start with, that you're trying to get your strike back, and then the distance will eventually come back as well. You'll get your feel back. But once you get confidence that you're not going to hit it fat anymore because you're doing all the correct movements, then you practice and your feel comes back and your speed control will come back. Just wanted to show quickly hitting it with a sand wedge. It's exactly the same, just set up exactly the same, and it just goes a little bit higher. So you're going to need, and this is why we don't try to avoid using lofted clubs, because it needs more effort to get there. I would have had to swing further back to get that ball to go on to the green. So it's open face. I'm having to hit it a little bit harder to get that because it's more effort and there's more can go wrong. But it's basically the same swing. So that's really it. I mean, just to sort of summarise, there's a lot of setup involved. It's quite different to a full swing. You're completely closer, you're slightly leaning forward, you're gripping down, the feet are slightly open, and then after that you're thinking about natural throwing action, keeping the body moving, standing a lot closer to the ball. There's a lot going on with chipping, but if you can get the setup right and then try to imagine it's a natural throwing action and keep your body moving, and the other little bits and pieces like the open club face, then it can all come together and you can be someone who suddenly almost had your chipping yips, can actually get back to being a good chipper again. It's not just in your head, and it can come back. So thanks for listening, and I'll inevitably be doing some more videos on chipping related things and pitching as well. So we'll be going over these sorts of things again. Okay, thanks.